Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Gaming. The time is 6:56. We're going to get started with The Summer's End, a Hong Kong 1986, a visual novel from the company Oracle and Bone. Hope you all enjoy it. When I think of my life, what I have, what I've accomplished, I think I'm quite content with what it is. I had a comfortable upbringing thanks to the hard work of my parents. I had a very typical family. My father worked to support the household. My mother was a homemaker. You'd say I was a spoiled child. I went to a private school. Whatever toys, clothes, or snacks I could have asked for, my father would have bought it for me. I was a princess. My parents had grown up quite poor after the war. When my father was a young man, he came to Hong Kong by himself from the mainland countryside to find work. Lost contact with his family during those tumultuous years after the war and political upheavings that followed. My father had worked his way up from a man doing odd jobs day and night until he eventually became a successful restaurant owner. Good for him. My mother came from a large family. She wasn't given opportunities to complete her schooling. She had to quit school at 14 to work to support her family. She had worked many years as a waitress before meeting my father. I suppose the sharp contrast between my upbringing compared to that of my parents was partly their desire to give me a childhood better than theirs. I think it was a good childhood that they gave me, a storybook childhood. When I was in Form 4 of high school, I received traffic news which would change my family forever. I remember it vividly being a sunny, bright, blue day in September. I was in good spirits. It was warm and clear outside. I hope we don't have a flashback. Classes just restarted after summer vacation, and we students were chatting away during the lunch hour about what we had done over the summer. I was in mid recital of a well rehearsed story about my summer trip to Taiwan when my teacher asked me to step out. The first trip I had ever made with my family on airplane, so I was quite excited to share the details of my trip to my classmates. I've never done anything that would require interdisciplinary meetings with the principal. So to be singled out like that, my heart dropped. The oh no feeling. I feared that it would be some kind of family emergency. I was worried. I got up from my desk amidst the stares of my classmates. I had followed my teacher out of the room. Found out it had been my mother who was waiting to meet me in the school hallway. She was pale. Her perfectly permed hair was frizzy. I knew something was wrong, but even then she couldn't tell me exactly what happened. My teacher told me that I was excused from afternoon classes and that I should accompany my mother to meet my father in the hospital. Thinking back, I don't think I ever finished telling my friends how I made my family walk from Rao Night Market to Ningxia Night Market and getting my family lost along the way. My young, naive self had vastly underestimated the walking distance between the two places, but my parents had indulged in my wishes. It became a long and languid walk filled with laughter and memorable discoveries, much more than a quick car ride would ever have been. It'd be a private memory I'd treasure always in my heart. I left the school with my mother. She called for a cab to take us to the hospital. We sat in silence for the entire duration of the car ride. My mother had always been a tight lipped person, never saying anything more than necessary. I wanted to reassure her that everything would be okay, but that would have been asking too much from her. My mother was not an emotionally strong person. It was my father who had been the pillar of support for our family. I had such a foreboding feeling in my heart. I remember feeling so nauseous during that car ride. There was so much traffic that day. Oh God, that must be terrible. Just wanting to get somewhere and just traffic. It was supposed to be a 10-minute ride, but because of the accident, it became a 60-minute trip. When we arrived at the hospital, my father had already been pronounced dead. I knew it was going to be like this. I would have gotten out of the car and walked. We might have been able to see him before he passed away. Could have predicted such things. I couldn't be too hard on myself on this part. Nothing we could have done for my father then. My father had been in a car accident en route to meet a business partner. His vehicle was mid-turn and unbeknownst to my father, an oncoming truck ran a red light. It was just, it was unfortunate. It was truly a terrible turn of events. My father died that September afternoon. I wish I could have said goodbye. The next station is Central, Interchange station for the Blue Island Line. My carefree youth had ended then. My mother, too, was never quite the same. She became much more anxious and protective of me, understandably so. Perhaps if my father was still around, I wouldn't be the same person I am now. I was too childish, too naive. Didn't realize how much of a spoiled child I was. I knew I had to change myself. For the sake of my mother and for the memory of my father, I had to become independent and self-reliant. I plunged myself into study to keep my thoughts preoccupied from reality of our situation. We no longer had family trips. Our table of three became a table of two. My mother sold my father's business, his car, and boxed up his belongings. We moved into a smaller house. My widowed mother didn't want to take over my father's business. She was afraid of being surrounded by too many reminders of my father's death. I never did learn how to drive. But even in death, my father still provided support for us. Father had taken out a sizable life insurance policy before his death, as if he had known something was going to happen. My widowed mother was able to use that money to send me to university and afford a modest home in Kowloon. She could have continued her lifestyle as a homemaker. She could continue her lifestyle as a homemaker. I could continue my direct focus toward my studies. It was as if we could live our lives the same way whether or not my father was still alive. It frustrated me deeply how well we could adjust ourselves after his death. So I kept pushing myself. I didn't have any particular aspirations. I just didn't want to become someone that would bring shame to my family. You'll bring honor to us all. I wanted to be someone that would make them proud. I had kept myself fully engaged with study, and whatever interaction I had with my peers seemed like such a distant memory. Now at the age of 23, it feels as if my days of being young had long passed. But it's not like I studied fortuitously without aim or purpose. My efforts were rewarded when my academic standing proved sufficient to land me a esteemed secretarial job at an international publishing firm shortly upon graduation. I was a secretary in title, but not in the normal sense. I answered only indirectly to my supervisor. I handled whatever task she asks of me. It can be challenging work sometimes, but I feel fairly competent at what I do. I thought that now my effort had finally produced something of an achievement. My modest success can be attributed to the work ethic my father had instilled in me. He always put his family first and gave his best effort each day to his work. My father is in heaven watching over me. I hope he can see this and be proud. My days at the office are like a marathon day after day. Each day will have its own set of challenges. A typical day is as follows. Arrive at work. I note down with complete accuracy the minutes of the daily morning meeting. Once that's finished, I proceed to schedule appointments for our business clients and our marketing staff. Our later lunchtime rolls in. I have the usual meal of barbecue pork and rice, nearby family restaurant. They leave late or early, take out or dine in. The wait for the line for the lunch rush is always the same. After a quick break, I'm back to daily grind of work. Continue working on my reports. From here on, the flow of time speeds up. I continue to receive calls and letters from clients. I take great care to make the appropriate correspondence with them all. I can spend several hours at my desk without knowing the sun had already set outside. Day's work is usually finished at 8 p.m. Okay, all due to YouTube, this is where we're going to have to end it. I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to sharing the next episode with you. Thanks so much. Check me out at Twitter. Have a great day, and thanks for starting your day with Sunrise Gaming.